Hello. So I often get asked, and also was always very desperately curious myself with how do I stay clear? How do I teach a class and not feel like I've swept up all this gunky energy? Or how do I feel like I can safely go into public and not just um, come home dirty or anything in that? How to have give healing sessions and to not take on stuff. And the biggest game changer for me, because I will admit that the various different techniques that I was taught through the years had me kind of live in fear for a while, where I was like just scared of other people and scared of somehow like fucking up and like it put me in a fear space, which that's not empowering. That is the opposite of empowerment. Fear space. And the biggest game changer was actually realizing that I have a choice. That when I get drained in situations, it's not because the person in front of me is draining. And that's not to say, we're all special, right? We're all fucktwats at different times. Excuse my language, not really. We all do stuff. Like, all of us are annoying. I like Carolyn Mace said in some lecture once, she's like, you think you're the only one going to your therapist about everyone in your life. They're like, everyone else is going to their therapist about you. I thought that was awesome. And what's really helpful is to realize that I can't control anyone around me, but I can be aware of how I'm feeling. So I'll give you an example. I was recently in a situation where after hanging out with this woman, I felt so drained. And I sincerely like her. And I was like, you know what? What was that? And then I had to look at, there's a part of my system, my belief system, that thinks that in order to have a successful interaction, I just need to give everything to whoever's in front of me. And I did that with my classes that I teach, and I do that with my friends. I do that with my lovers. It's just like, let me just give you everything, and then I wonder why I'm exhausted by my interactions. And it was just really helpful, because after that, I started practicing, okay, whoever I'm around, I'm not just going to go like explode all my stuff on them, not even like in a negative way, but I'm not going to give them my glitter. I'm just going to sit and just be in my center and kind of wait for them to come to me, as opposed to always just giving. And I would imagine if the opposite is true, if you're someone who never is like giving out in your system, then that's a fun play to also look energetically, what is it like to start to reach out a little bit, as opposed to always just stepping back. But that there's a real helpfulness in recognizing where we might have our own hooks and holes that would cause us to either leak outwards, pull inwards, or like hook into others, or let ourselves get hooked in. So, if I had a belief that my students only would like me, like I must give hands-on adjustments to everyone in my class, and it's actually not coming from me authentically of like actually doing it. That's what happened to come up, but I like was slave driving myself or forcing myself to do this. That in itself, that pressure I put on myself, is going to create some distortion in the field, and is going to cause me to leak energy, me to pick up energy, and also me to feel a little bit confused. And that's really helpful, because then anytime I leave a situation and I notice like, oh wow, I feel a little bit whacked out, I can look in and be like, so what was my interaction in this field that caused this? Was I actually being myself? Or was there a way that I was forcing myself to be different? And that can even come up where it's like, oh, I constantly suppress myself around people. I try to be a good girl, or, I really hold what I think and feel because I'm fearing other people's judgments. So it really does become fascinating, because I think about the flip side, that there are some really tough situations where I'm holding space for a client where there's just some really deep pain that's coming through. And even, of course, there's going to be projections that happen as well. Like if you're all humans are projecting on one another, so it's helpful to be aware of when you're projecting on people, and also when you're getting projected upon, and how do you play into it. And so the times where I can hold some really like heavy, crazy, massive space and just leave feeling fine, joyful, energized, is because at those times I'm in my center. I've got my boundaries. I have nothing to prove. I don't feel like I need to fix this person. I don't need to give them anything. I don't need anything from them. It's like I'm really a stable base for myself. And that in itself keeps it clean. And so if there are times in your interactions where you feel like that you need to be a certain way that actually isn't really true for you, and that could be with one person or with many people, if there's unmet needs that you're trying to get from other people, whether it's I don't ever feel like I'm good enough, and so I constantly am trying to prove myself to others, and so I'm putting that undercurrent need for reassurance from people all the time. That would be one example. I need to be validated by other people. That can be really exhausting for our own system. So if you can start to see where trying to please others, get certain needs met that actually is not anyone else's place or business to meet for you, and when you're behaving in a way that's actually not you, that in itself will really help clean up the field. And so, because there are times where you can go into public and maybe it's not, there's going to be certain frequencies when you walk through and it's like there's a lot of energy there. And there are times where it's like, you might be a little bit sick or a little bit depressed. Joy, personal joy, is like the best protection in the world. Like my favorite thing is when I recall all those times, and maybe this might be helpful for you. Recall all those times in your life where you were so in your joy, you didn't really care what anyone was thinking, feeling, saying around you. Like you were so immersed in whatever that was for you. Like that in itself, and it can be even not even like obvious joy things. Like I remember there was like a week in my life where I like got off on calculus, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm gonna just be this like math person, and like I just would get off on like doing these equations, okay? So it may not be the obvious joy, okay, but that's gonna be a really great protection for you. And sometimes the reason why, like when going to public, why we'll feel a little murky afterwards is how many times do you force yourself to make eye contact with people and you actually didn't feel like it, and you kind of opened yourself up and were making eye contact and even talking, and actually like that wasn't your jam for that time, or that flip side of like, it's not safe for me to look at people and talk to them, when in fact, like sometimes those random stranger interactions are the most fun on the planet. So why I'm telling you this is so that you don't feel like you have to live in fear of being around groups of people, being intimate, but you do have the ability to be self-aware, to take responsibility for how you give yourself away, how you hook in, and where you might betray yourself. And that might give you some extra insight of why you feel like you're always taking energy on. More about that later, but that's some little helpful tidbits from Bali on this magic green hat day. Bye.